Okay, hello everyone. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to another CareerFoundry event. My name is Alison. I am the Senior Brand Manager here at CareerFoundry. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us for today's event. Today, I am delighted to be joined by CareerFoundry graduate and UX designer and YouTuber Morgan Brennan. It's the first time that we've welcomed Morgan to a CareerFoundry event, so thank you so much for being here today. And just while people are joining, Morgan, do you want to say a quick hello and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. As she said, I'm Morgan. I used to be a CareerFoundry student. I did CareerFoundry from November 2020 until about April 2021. And now I work as a UX designer at Vanguard, which is one of the biggest financial services firms in the world. And I'm looking forward to talking to everybody today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Morgan. While people are still joining, please let us know where you're tuning in from by just dropping your name and a message in the chat. People have already started, which is really nice. So hello to everyone there. We love to see where you're joining from because we're streaming all around the world. So I'm in Berlin right now. Morgan's in the States. Are you in New Jersey?
Yes, I am in New Jersey.
Time zones. I like to hear people all around the world. Yeah, Canada, there we go. Hi, Anna. Please let us know where you're joining from. And maybe also just tell us what you're hoping to learn from today's webinar and maybe what you want to hear from Morgan and why you signed up. We like to keep our events as interactive as possible. So please feel free to post your comments and your questions throughout the event in the chat, whether you're watching us on Big Marker or on LinkedIn or YouTube. We'll try and respond and keep the event as interactive as we can. Oh wow, France, Denver, Philadelphia, Oakland, Copenhagen. So cool. So hi everyone, thanks for joining. So before we kick off, let me just introduce you to CareerFoundry quickly. CareerFoundry is the online school for your career change into tech. We offer programs in UX design, UI design, data analytics, full stack web development, digital marketing, and product management. And we guide you from complete beginner to job-ready tech professional and help you land your first job in the field. We're not just any old school though. Our programs are so flexible that you don't need to quit your day job and in order to change your career. You get regular one-on-one mentorship from not one, but two industry experts. And if you don't land a job within 180 days of graduation, then we refund your tuition. Before we hear all about Morgan's journey from marketing to UX design, I'll just share a couple of our house rules for webinars. So firstly, the webinar will be recorded today and we'll be sending it out to everyone via email afterwards. And as I've already mentioned, if you have any questions for Morgan, you can just post them in the chat throughout the event. And we're going to chat for 30 minutes or so, and then we'll answer as many questions from the audience today at the end of the session in a 20-minute Q&A. If you'd like to know specifically more about CareerFoundry's programs, please go ahead and book a call with one of our program advisors. They'll be able to provide you with further information and answer all of your questions about studying with CareerFoundry, just like Morgan did. And you can book a free call with our team by clicking on the sticky note on the right-hand chat if you're watching on Big Marker. Okay, intro done. Thank you, everyone. I think that's enough from me. So if you're ready, Morgan, let's just get started with the questions.
Go for it.
Nice. So let's just start. Maybe I know you've introduced yourself, but could you just tell us a little bit about your background and what you were doing before deciding to make a career change to UX design?
Of course. So I graduated in 2020. My degree was in international business, and I was trying to go into marketing. So I was working a digital marketing assistant job in my final semester of school. And that was the spring of 2020. Mm-hmm. So the pandemic was rolling around, but so was graduation for me. And I really realized I was not a fan of marketing, and I didn't understand why. It seemed like the perfect career for me. I felt it was going to be a good mix of creativity and business. I thought I was going to be able to connect the business with the customers, but it really wasn't like that for me. That might have just been my experience, but I wasn't a fan of the interruptive aspects of marketing. Mm-hmm. So with graduation rolling around, I really had to decide, am I going to stay with this company and go down a marketing manager track, or do I need to quit and find something else? I'm about to get this degree. What am I going to do with it? And then I got furloughed from that job because of the pandemic. And I sort of took that as an opportunity. I started my own digital strategy LLC, started doing free consultations with small businesses to figure out, okay, what do I actually like about marketing? Because it's so broad. Through that, I started learning what UX design was, because I was working with this one company who wound up hiring me. Their website was not good. They wanted me to put out these digital communications of like emails and social media posts that lead back to a website that gives users nothing to do. And so I started looking into that more, and that's how I found UX, completely fell in love with it. And I started doing a little bit of work with them. I really didn't know how to use the tools. I started using Figma because it was free, and it was terrible. My work was not good. They wound up running into financial troubles themselves due to the pandemic. And so we split amicably in November of 2020. I signed up for CareerFoundry to switch over careers, and here I am 3 years later.
I always think it's so interesting to hear how people come across UX, because whatever background it is, it tends to be that people just stumble across it. Like you were doing marketing and like through this kind of like shoddy website. And then you kind of, it's always kind of an unexpected surprise. So yeah, I'm glad you found it, because obviously it led you to now. So do you think it was because of the pandemic and the kind of weird situation we were all in at that time that led you to study with CareerFoundry, or did you, what was it about like an online course that made you think this is the way I want to go to learn UX?
So at the time, I was already looking at education before that company ran into financial troubles. So I was watching YouTube videos, and I'm sure most people, if you've looked at YouTube videos about UX, you've heard of Chun Buns. She's a very big UX YouTuber. I don't think she posts very much anymore, but back in 2020, it was like she was the UX YouTuber. And she's the one who spoke about boot camps. I had no idea boot camps were a thing. I honestly thought any online course was a scam at the time, you know, like, because I had my highfalutin business degree. So anything online must be a farce. And then she explained how she changed careers. I believe she went to a different boot camp. I knew that her boot camp, I believe it was General Assembly, it was too fast-paced and too expensive for me. So I started really researching different boot camps once I knew that that was a thing and that it was actually a common thing at the time. And I chose CareerFoundry because I signed up for the free 6-day course where you guys would email. And I really liked the way the content was structured. It was an affordable price, and I needed it to be self-paced because I was still working at that time. And that's sort of how I came to CareerFoundry. It just, you know, the learning style matched with my learning style, which is like the most important thing. And it was the most affordable. So it worked with my schedule, and I could afford it. So
thanks. Did you feel like the short course was a good reflection of what followed, like now that you've done the full program?
The full program is better, definitely. I mean, there's only so much you can get through emails, but I do think it was representative of how information was communicated through the course. But there's so much more when you actually join. I think one of the more valuable things is seeing the examples that are part of the courses. So with each lesson, there are student examples, and that just having that visual of like, okay, here's why it works and this is why it makes sense was like incredibly valuable to me. So the short course was great and it definitely brought me in, but the course itself was much, much better.
Nice. Okay, thanks. Yeah, again, I was just curious because we get a lot of mixed feedback. Well, no, good feedback obviously about a short course, but obviously I haven't taken one and then like led to the course. So I'm glad to hear it was reflective and a good taster for what was to come. So yeah, let's maybe talk a little bit about studying with CareerFoundry. You made the decision, you tried the short course, the learning style suited you, and the fact that it's self-paced, as you mentioned. What would you say was the biggest highlight from the whole experience, the whole immersion program?
So actually, it didn't come until after I had finished the immersion. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and I was pretty scared to talk to other people about my career change, including people who were going through the same thing as me. I don't know why. it happened.
Yeah.
And after I graduated from the Immersion course, I decided to finally join the CareerFoundry Slack channel.
Okay.
And I was so sad that I didn't join it before, because there were so many people going through the same thing and then talking about getting a job. I eventually joined because I needed to, someone offered me work that I wasn't able to do, and I wanted to give it to someone else. And I was like, I missed out on so much here. So I was pretty active after that in the Slack channel. But like, that would have been so great if I had just pushed myself to be more involved with the community. And I really advise other people to take advantage of the community you'll be a part of.
Good advice. Yeah, it's hard if it's not something you're used to. And if you just focused on doing your own thing and you were like, this is my goal. And
I was scared. And I don't want to say I was embarrassed, but it was like, I felt like I was not as good as other people, and I didn't want to start comparing myself. So I didn't get involved when it was not like that at all. It was very supportive. And it was just me, honestly, not being in the best like mental health state due to the pandemic and everything. It's not a great time in my life. But yeah, so I would say I basically just stopped myself from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah, thank you for being so honest. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It is a really supportive community, like you say. We get students from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all ages. And yeah, I could see why it might be intimidating to join this huge Slack community, but it's super helpful. So I would also recommend it if you're a student and yeah, you've not like tapped into the Slack yet, then it's well worth it. And you've kind of covered that was like something you overcame, but what else would you say was the biggest challenge throughout your studies?
It was definitely, and I feel like this is most people, actually staying focused, because I have a really bad habit of not doing progressive learning. And I'll be like in the middle of doing a course and I'm like, I learn about a topic and I'm like, I'm going to take another course to learn all about that. And I basically didn't focus on just doing CareerFoundry, and I spent a bunch of money I didn't need to on a bunch of stuff I didn't finish. So it really didn't have anything to do with CareerFoundry, maybe because it was self-paced and it wasn't like, oh, you have this due exactly here, and if you don't do it, you're out of the program. That definitely that style wouldn't have worked for me. But I was also, when you're a beginner at something again, you feel like you need to know things right away. And so I would just go down rabbit holes outside of CareerFoundry when I really should have just stayed focused. So that was my personal challenge, but I wouldn't say CareerFoundry itself gave me any challenges.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. And maybe let's talk a little bit about your relationship with your mentor and your tutor. What was that like?
My mentor and tutor, like, they were fantastic. Again, it was another thing where I didn't take advantage of it enough. I thought that in the beginning, I thought that meetings with your mentor were mandatory. And then, so like I was meeting with her and I would just be like really, really nervous. And then when I found out you didn't need to meet with your mentor anymore, I just stopped doing it. And I really wish that I hadn't. Again, it was that part of being a UX designer is that you need to be open to criticism and feedback and everything. And I was just like, I'm new at this. I don't want someone to tell me what I'm doing is bad. And so I did not meet with them enough. I did email with my tutor a lot. I found that I could email easily, but doing the video chats with my mentor was more difficult for me from a personal standpoint, dealing with a lot of anxiety. And I wish I hadn't, because she was the sweetest lady. She was fantastic. She had industry experience, and I should have taken more advantage of that. Yeah.
For those that maybe aren't aware, we have like a mentor and a tutor when everyone's paired with both a mentor and a tutor when they study with CareerFoundry. And your tutor, you primarily communicate like via email and message, and your mentor, you have like scheduled video calls. But I guess you can use them in tandem if like one communication style doesn't work as well for you as the other. But everyone finds like a different relationship somewhat more valuable. But I mean, now, and you've come out the other side very strongly, so don't worry too much. Just make the most of that relationship. Okay, so during the program as well, one of the main appeals, I think, for a lot of our students studying the UX design program is that you finish with a portfolio. and a couple of projects in there kind of ready to equip you in the job search. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the experience of building your first UX portfolio, I presume, and how beneficial you found it, what the process was like. Yeah, maybe you could just talk us through a little bit about how that you even get started making your portfolio in the course.
Yeah, so the course starts with like the intro course where you do like the UX part of the project and not so much the UI part. You start and you go through the whole like actually coming up with your solution, maybe doing a little bit of wireframes if I remember correctly, but you don't go through the actual complete high fidelity wireframe. But then the immersion, because the intro course is maybe 2 to 4 weeks, and then the intro course or the immersion course is like the bulk. And then you go through the full process of creating some sort of product. I found it really, really helpful having those pieces be part of my portfolio. I also did the UI specialization, but I did not finish, unfortunately. I realized very quickly that I am not good at visual design, and I found a real love for the strategy and the actual coming up with the solution. That's what I decided to focus on. So if I can be completely honest, if I had just stayed with my UX immersion portfolio piece, I'm not sure how well I would have done. But I took that portfolio piece and I did a solo project on my own, because that was like the first thing I did. The first thing you make isn't going to be your best piece of work. So having that and then being able to go off and do my own projects and work on different skills was invaluable, especially going back and looking at all of the course information and those example projects and everything. I still used the course to do my own projects outside of CareerFoundry. So your portfolio is everything. I mean, that's what's going to get you brought in for interviews. The certification is great, but if people can't see what kind of work you can do, then it's going to be really difficult to get hired. So the portfolio, I really recommend taking what you learn from CareerFoundry and apply it to like outside projects, whether you're doing something for a small business, a friend's business, something that you made up, which is what I did. It wasn't anything that was intended to be launched. So I would say that the applied knowledge of the course is what helped the most with my portfolio.
Nice. That's great advice, because we also get a lot of feedback from students that, like when you're trying to find the experience to land your first job, it's obviously really difficult, but this just goes to show you can, if you have an idea of your own, then you can turn it into something. I was going to ask you what your project was, but it sounds like it's something you just had like an idea for, like this would be great.
Yeah, it was just it was like, I saw a problem in the real world. A lot of my friends are gig workers, so their taxes are complicated and they're very lazy with doing their taxes. So they have to pay a ton of money that they don't really need to pay because they're not tracking their expenses. And I got so mad at them that I was like, okay, what if we had some sort of product that helps gig workers track their expenses year round in a more intuitive way? So that's what I wound up doing. I went through it as if it was like a real project. I even put a little bit of money into doing surveys and stuff through SurveyMonkey. I reached out to people on social media. It's really unlikely to really put myself out there. So that's when I think I really started to like shine in my projects, was when I was like actually bothering people and being like, hey, could you answer these questions for me? So yeah, that was the first project that I think actually got me hired at where I work now.
That's awesome. Really cool. Amazing, like dedication and commitment to follow it through. And sounds super valuable. I think that's also mentioned in our short courses. If you're not quite sure where to begin with UX, think about a problem in your real life and how you could potentially solve it. So nice. So you had obviously finished your portfolio. You mentioned the specialization course that you didn't quite finish, no problem. But what happened next in terms of the job search and like getting ready to start applying for jobs? How did you get support from CareerFoundry? How did you go about just tackling the job search?
So I was also bad and did not finish the job prep course. So I don't think I would have been eligible for reimbursement or anything because I didn't finish it. Regardless, I'm pretty sure I got hired like the day before the the 6-month mark. So I think I actually got my job offer the same day that I started CareerFoundry the previous year, which is crazy.
Wow.
So the job hunting process is not easy. I say this a lot on my YouTube channel. You'll see YouTubers and, like UX influencers and stuff talk about, oh, I switched from this career to UX in 2 weeks or 2 months or whatever it might be. It is difficult. The market is a little bit more saturated now than it was. I think UX got very popular during the pandemic, and now that all these boot camps are so accessible, it's getting a little bit more difficult to stand out, which is why I really encourage people to take the knowledge that they learn from CareerFoundry and apply it to some sort of real life project that's not related to CareerFoundry. It was tough. I'm not gonna lie. But for me, a big problem for me was that I was still so unfocused, and I had a lot of analysis paralysis, where I would feel like, okay, if I just become an expert on this topic, then I'll get a job. So I took a bunch of unnecessary courses on like VR design, like XR design. Like I took so many other courses instead of just working on my resume, trying to do real world projects with local businesses. I wasted a bunch of time, honestly, like after I finished the UX Immersion course. Once I realized that, and I buckled down and I just did a simple portfolio site, because I spent way too much time over designing my portfolio site. And same thing with my resume. I had a bunch of unnecessary stuff on there. So I started treating the job process like a UX designer. So I would go out, try something, see what works, get feedback, mess around with it, try again. And I also had to practice interviewing a lot, because I had the bad habit of memorizing answers. So when I would get the question, what is your design process? I would go through my head of what I learned in CareerFoundry, and it is so embarrassing when you forget it, because that happened to me. So that having that real experience of trying to do a project on your own really helps you in that job hunting process, because you can actually start to have a real conversation with the people you're interviewing with. And that's when things really started lining up. By the time I had like this confidence, I finished that app I was talking about, had my portfolio presentation down. I was interviewing with Vanguard, who I wound up going with, but I was interviewing with NBC at the same time, and I had to withdraw. They said that I was like a top candidate when I was withdrawing. And it's because I think I showed that confidence and like, yeah, I've been through it with this design process. It's tough. So yeah, I think once you actually gain confidence in yourself as a designer by getting that, like your hands dirty with some projects, the job hunting and job interview process becomes a lot easier.
Nice. Yeah. And really good advice, I think, about kind of thinking about the fundamentals of why you're doing it. It probably is easy to get overwhelmed and think about like learning all these different kind of areas of design and UX. But if it's your first like role, then yeah, focus on your resume, focus on your portfolio, keep it simple. And I think that maybe will help you focus some more. Sounds like you took a lot on. You had a lot to process during that time.
Yeah. I was scattered. I was all over the place. Another thing that I just do want to add on is when you are doing your projects and you're creating your case studies and your portfolio, you need to understand why you're doing certain things. So if someone's looking through your portfolio and they ask you why you made a certain decision and that's not clear in your case study, you should know the answer why. Like, oh, why did you use like red? Like you should generally either have an answer, like whatever you do, just don't make up an answer. If you don't know, you can be honest, like, and just say that. I think I've been on the hiring committee a few times and I know what I would prefer to hear. And that's just honesty of how you got through this design process. So really try not to just go through the motions and really try to understand why are you making certain decisions. Like people will have user personas and the product they make has nothing to do with that persona. So don't just go through the motions. Make sure that you're really understanding why you're making certain decisions, because that will help a lot.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thanks. So yeah, you mentioned Vanguard, which is where you're working now as a UX designer. How did you find the company and the job that you applied for?
I was very, very active on LinkedIn when I started getting into that groove of really understanding myself as a designer. I realized also that like I love personal finances. That's a personal love of mine. I love talking about money. I love helping people with their finances and budgeting and everything. So that was another thing that I did was I started really zeroing in. Like I realized I would get really excited by fintech company job descriptions. I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to focus on. And then that's why I made that financial app. And that really like I used Vanguard. It was not good. Their digital products are not good. We're working on it. But I found it through LinkedIn. And then I was honestly really shocked that they wanted to bring me in. Actually, a funny story is that the day after I finished the UX immersion, I applied for a job that was through like a recruiting company, and they didn't say what the company was or anything. And it was a junior UX designer position. And I applied, I got to the call with the recruiter, and it turned out that it was for Vanguard, and I didn't make it past the recruiter. So, and I tell everybody at the company this to let them know that they said no to me at first. And then, I was underqualified. I didn't really understand myself as a designer. I was still so scattered. And I'm glad that happened, because then I actually would have been an employee of the recruiting company where I would be a contractor. So 6 months later, I got a job with the real deal. So yeah, but all through LinkedIn. I applied exclusively through LinkedIn. I love that you can network through it. I get messages from people all the time about like, applying to Vanguard and everything, and just making those connections is really important. And then posting, getting your name out there. It's all really helpful. So LinkedIn is my preferred method of applying for jobs.
Nice, thanks. Did you start building your network like while you're doing CareerFoundry, or did you kind of focus on it after you'd finished the immersion?
I would bother people when I was in CareerFoundry. I would just the highest ranking UXer in different companies I could find. I would just be like, hey, that certification you have, does it matter? Like that kind of stuff. So yeah, I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking for information at that point. But then when I was getting to the end of the UX immersion course is really when I started being like, hey, looking for a job, if anybody has one.
Nice. Yeah, we also hear that a lot from other students that, just even like a subtle comment that you might not think is going to be like relevant on LinkedIn, you never know, like it could be like, make the comment, reach out, ask a simple question. More good advice. And so you got the job, congrats. And you've been there for over a year now, right?
Almost 2 years. Yeah. It'll be 2 years in November.
Amazing. What was it like starting that first role in UX at Vanguard?
So I was 23 at the time, and it was my first big girl job. So I'd never had benefits or anything before. So it was really weird. I'd know working for a big company is so different. It was also still pandemic times. So everything was remote. All the onboarding was remote. You didn't really get to meet anybody, but now we're back in a hybrid workplace where, I see everybody 1 to 3 times a week, depending on how many times I go into the office. When I started and I started actually getting into the work, I really wished I had paid more attention to the boring stuff in CareerFoundry. So things like documentation and working in an agile environment, because most tech companies are an agile environment. And I didn't know what any of it meant, because I was I just want to get to the design stuff in CareerFoundry. So really recommend pay attention to the boring stuff, because it can actually set you apart from other people. But everybody was really, really supportive. I spent most of my time setting up one-on-ones with people to learn about their role. Fortunately, we use a design system. So I got to do more conceptual stuff. I didn't have to focus on actually doing the visual design. I just used the components that already existed. So there were a lot of like really simple things that I got to work on because we were just working on modernizing the web app because it was like really, really bad. So little things like how would pagination work across devices, like very little things to sort of ease me into it. But I've had nothing but positive experiences. I'm very happy where I am.
Good. I'm so pleased. Yeah, it sounds like you're really loving it, and yeah, happy to hear it. What would you say? You've kind of covered this already, but I'll ask it anyway. But what is it that you like and dislike about the finance industry, or specifically fintech, I guess?
Definitely the worst part is the restrictions. So if anybody has a Vanguard account, there is certain language that we have to legally use, and then we have to have designs and ways of showing what these words mean, and it just gets so cluttered. And the information density is like insane because it's a bunch of data tables and stuff like that, and that makes it really difficult because Vanguard's like our investment philosophy, like you're not supposed to encourage people to day trade. It's about holding investments long term. When some of these more modern fintech apps, they can do like flashier stuff that shows you like, oh, this is the recent news to help you make decisions and things like that, while we're just trying to keep people calm and give them all the information they need. So I think the philosophy that we have makes it a little frustrating as a designer, just like from a creativity standpoint, but the regulations and everything really tie our hands with a lot of things. So that's probably the most difficult part. But my favorite part is that I personally love personal finances. I follow the investment philosophies of Vanguard, so I can sort of come at this as a user, and they're starting to target a younger demographic. So I'm like, it's me, you know? So I love it. I love helping people with their finances. I think that good financial information should be widely available and help people, reach their goals and everything. And I get to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I need your help. I'm not.
We'll talk after this.
What's the sort of typical day like for you then at Vanguard? I mean, you mentioned to me earlier that it's like the middle of the day for you now, but they're very flexible. You get to just go back to work and you have a lot of meetings. But what's a typical day like?
Yeah, honestly, it is a lot of meetings. So an agile environment is great because you get to be autonomous. And for me, I don't really have a boss. I'm just like sort of trusted as the designer, and I work with my cross-functional team. So we have a product owner, a scrum master, UX strategist. I'm the UX designer. We have a content strategist, data analytics, and developers, and then more people that branch off, but like that's like the core team. So it is a lot of meetings. Like that's the bad part about an agile environment for a big company is that when everybody's autonomous, then you have to constantly be communicating with people to make sure you're on the same page, especially when it comes to finances. So it's a lot of meetings. So my first stand-up is at 10 a.m. I work across 2 different teams, and I'm a primary designer on one team, and I'm more of a support role on another. So I don't have to go to the second team's meetings too much. Like it's not a problem if I miss it. And then we'll have some collaboration time after our stand-up. And then hopefully I get some design time. But sometimes I really do just have days where it's back-to-back meetings. It'll be team meetings, one-on-one meetings, and then company-wide meetings. Usually people are very respectful when you're like, hey, I haven't had time to actually sit down and do something for like 3 days. I need to miss these meetings, and that's fine. I like thinking about strategy. I'm hoping to move into a UX strategy role in the future. So I'm okay with doing the meetings and, like brainstorming with people and letting them know what's going on with their team and that kind of stuff. So I don't mind the meetings so much, but that really is like a typical day. It is a lot of meetings because you have to communicate with everybody.
Nice, thanks. And yeah, like you mentioned with cross-functional teams, it's kind of the way it has to be. And especially being remote, you have an office as well. I think you mentioned that you go in to see people in person, but you're in like a hybrid situation, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. You've mentioned a lot of this already, but I think it's nice to recap if we can. What would you say is the most rewarding thing about working in UX design? And then what is something that you like the least about it?
I'll start with what I like the least. UX will like ruin your life because you'll look at things in your day-to-day life and you're like, who designed this? Like you start really recognizing. My mom and I were trying to change the thermostat in my house, and like we were like, none of this makes sense. Like this needs a better product designer. This is not intuitive at all. Like, and we were just getting frustrated. My mom doesn't really fully understand what I do, and they're like, Morgan, like get over there, help them redesign this. Yeah. So that's probably the worst part. I'm not kidding. You're gonna get frustrated with everything. Especially if you have like a friend or something that runs a business and you see their website and you're like, oh, yikes. The best part is definitely helping make people's lives easier. That's what I realized, like that's who I am as a person. I'm working on not being considerate to a fault anymore, but like I always do what I can to try and make people's lives easier within my power. And that's sort of just how I apply it to my work. So I find that really validating, especially because Vanguard is such a big company. So I work on the dashboard of like for our self-directed clients, so the people who invest on their own, and that gets like tens of millions of views every month. And when we get feedback being like, oh, thank God, like this is so much easier, because it's also a lot of old people who aren't so tech savvy. So when I'm able to make it easier for them to understand their finances, that makes me feel fantastic.
Oh, that's really nice. I'm really pleased to hear it. And both good answers. I love that. I've never heard that one actually about bad UX, but it's so true. We have two more questions and then we'll move over to the Q&A. Cool. What's one thing that you know now about working in UX that you wish you knew maybe 2 years ago at the start of your journey?
It's okay to not know everything. I feel like that's how most people feel when they first start something. And I talked about this before, that there's that imposter syndrome in the beginning, but it's like, if you go in already knowing everything, you're definitely in the wrong place. So I've sort of started to embrace that feeling where I'm like, oh, I'm nervous to be here. I've started using that as a cue of like, yeah, then I'm doing all right. If I'm not qualified to be here, but here I am, then like I'm doing okay. So that's something that it's very common in UX because there's so many terms and everything that that people use and different standards that people follow. But a lot of UX is either personal to the designer or personal to the company. And there's no one way to do things. And I think that I love that UX is like part creativity, part science. And I focused too much on the science in the past, where I'm like, no, there's an exact way to do things. Like I have to follow the design process to a T. And you don't. You do what fits the situation.
Yeah, another great answer. Really great, thanks. And finally, what would you say is one piece of career advice that you live by, maybe something you've learned in the past few years, and that you would offer to someone else making a career change? You said you get a lot of comments and stuff on LinkedIn. Maybe it's not the most frequent thing that comes up, but that's just what's the most valuable thing that you think you would want to offer to someone who's thinking about either making a career change in general or specifically to UX design?
Honestly, what I just said is really what it is, but also take action. I've been working on that a lot in my professional and personal life recently, is sort of treating life as like the iterative process of like put something out there, see what works. Like even if it's just for a conversation, like if you're designing something, do something very quickly and be like, okay, is this the general direction we want to go? Instead of making every single thing perfect. So I've actually become like known in our larger studio for being the person that just like gets it done. Like it might not be beautiful because I cannot make beautiful things. Like I genuinely can't. If we didn't have a design system, I'm not sure if I'd have a job. But I can put ideas together very quickly. So I would say, don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Just do something. If you can take design, like actual visual design, out of it for as long as you can, like when you're creating your case studies, type it up or write it down first and then focus on design after, because so many people get so focused on that kind of stuff. I'm one of them. Most people are. Even the senior designers that I work with, I had to tell them to stop doing that. I had to tell them to like write it down first and then design, because you get so lost in it. So I would definitely say that for designing and career, it's like, just do it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And again, something we've heard before a lot, just showing your work at an early stage, especially while you are learning. But thankfully, again, from what I've heard, the UX community is really supportive. So actually, once you get over that kind of fear of like, oh, it's not finished, I don't know if I can share this yet, you'll realize that whether it's the CareerFoundry Slack or your seniors at work, then the feedback you get is going to be helpful because it's very supportive, rather than, it shouldn't be a scary thing to show your work at an early stage. So yeah, great advice. I hope everyone has found Morgan's story inspiring and helpful so far. And we've had so many questions. I'm just checking the chat. And yeah, we'll move over to the Q&A now and just try and answer as many questions as we can from the audience. If you do still have a question for Morgan, you can still add a comment in the chat. And we'll try, like I say, to get through as many of them as we can. But it's really nice to see so many nice comments and stuff in the chat. A lot of people connecting there, which is great to see. Sorry, I'm just reading it. Let's just get started with the Q&A. So here we have a question first from Ishwari, who says, I'm living in Germany and I'm currently enrolled in the UI design program. Do I need to do the UX design program as well to get the job in the design industry? I mean, my short answer is no, definitely not, Ishwari. We have two separate programs. They're two very different roles, although there is a lot of crossover. But maybe, Morgan, you could explain a little bit more about the differences and why UX and UI are separate.
Yeah, it's always tough to explain. To me, in my mind, and people have different answers for this. UX is more of the feel of what you're creating. So because it's where does UX end and UI start? Normally, so like I do both. But like I said, we use a design system. So we already have like our branding, we have our components, and I'm just putting them together. So UI is more of how things look, and then UX is more of how things feel. So how usable is the product? How is it easy to navigate? You know, you've got like all that information architecture and everything you have to do. That's more on the UX side of actually like laying the foundation and building the early low fidelity version of the thing. And then UI is more of, and it's just as important as UX. There, you can't really have one without the other. So whether a company decides to have them as two roles or one, both work. Then, like I said, UI is more making the experience feel cohesive. Are things easy to find? Is it accessible? That's a big thing. Is accessibility is a big part of UI design. So to be a designer, if you want to be a UI designer, then I would just say stick with the UI design course and specialize in that. But there is a lot of crossover, but I'm sure that the UI course covers what you would need to know from the UX side.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's a little bit of both in like each program, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's no hard line of where UX stops and UI begins.
Nice, good to know. I guess maybe it varies as well per company. Like you mentioned, you
definitely
have so many different like types of UX like roles, like strategy versus design, etc. So every company probably is a bit different. Thanks, Morgan. This is a question from John. I know you're in your 20s, Morgan, but John says, I'm doing a career change later in life. Do you think age is an issue when hiring a UX designer?
No, definitely not. One, it's illegal. At least where I am, it is illegal to discriminate based on age. But we've hired people who did boot camps who are older. I'm honestly surprised that they hired me. They hired me because I'm younger and I don't have that life experience. If anything, you do better because if making the assumption that you've worked in the past. Maybe at a larger company, you might have more experience of how a company works. So you might actually have like a better job interviewing than I did because I had no idea what I was talking about. Yeah. So no, you're definitely good. And if someone discriminates you against their age, you don't need to worry about work because you can just sue.
Very true. We have a really nice article we just published on our blog about making a career change at age 30, 40, and 50. I'll try and find one and share it in the chat if you're interested, because it mentions a lot of things that Morgan just mentioned about how you can put the spin on it, actually, that you have just a completely different skill set to offer, and you shouldn't be like ashamed of that. You should use that to your advantage. So I'll try and dig it out and share it in the chat. Okay, this is a question from Valeria, I'm very sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. But they would like to know what digital marketing skills helped you in UX design, and how did you sell those skills to HR of your company?
So as I said before, I'm more strategy focused and focused on the solution, but a big benefit of having that digital marketing background is that I bring a business perspective. So when you're working for a bigger company, obviously they have to hire and pay a lot of people. So you do have to keep the business goals in mind when you're designing. So while I work with other people who have design backgrounds, they have degrees, like they, in graphic design, they went to art school, I went to business school. So when we collaborate, they trust me more on the side where I'm like, yes, this is great for the user, but if we could compromise here because we do need to meet these business goals, or like I said, Vanguard's philosophy is long-term investing, and we want to impress those values upon our users. So that's a business goal. If a user's saying like, I just want to day trade, you can't really listen to them because that's not what Vanguard is about. So I would say that my business background as a whole gives me that unique perspective in my team.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I feel like actually marketing has a lot of like transferable elements that you can definitely bring into other tech roles and design roles, but also you have that kind of added benefit with the business side of it as well. That sounds like it's serving you well now. Do you think that was important to the HR? Like, did it come up in your interviewing process with Vanguard?
I brought it up when I did my portfolio presentation. I did a little slide that talked about my design values, and I had a cute little Venn diagram. And I said that, I meet users' needs and business goals, and like those are my design values, is finding that compromise. So I brought it up. I think I probably talked about it early on. Honestly, I was so nervous. Those interviews are a blur. But I do remember the portfolio presentation.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Everyone always says you should remember the questions so you're like prepared for that. But sometimes you walk out of an interview like,
it's been 2 hours. Like,
Thanks, Morgan. This is a question from Cheyenne on LinkedIn. Are CareerFoundry programs flexible enough for students who work a 9-to-5 job?
Yeah, it's self-paced. So I originally was going to do it part-time because I was working at the time, but because I left that company that I was working with, I just went in and did it full-time. You can definitely do it. I believe you have 10 months to finish the whole program. You should be fine doing 10 to 15 or 10 to 20 hours a week.
Yeah, perfect. And Cheyenne, it depends on your preferred preferences, really. Some of our students wake up early and do an hour or two before work. Some of them are lucky enough to work flexibly that they can kind of fit in around their work. Or some of our students work really late into the evening, and maybe you're better at working at 2 a.m. or maybe you're better working at 6 p.m. But it's really
that's a great point. I'd like to add on to that what helped me was reading the lesson that I need to do, walking away, doing what I needed to get done for the day, and then coming back and then refreshing, and then going to do the project. That was really helpful to me. So I think that would actually be a great schedule. Wake up, read the lesson, go do your job, and then maybe work on the lesson later that night or the following morning.
Yeah, great idea. I think I would be the same as well. Okay, nice. I hope that helps, Cheyenne. And here's another question from LinkedIn. This is from Grace Ann, who says, I completed the web development program at CareerFoundry, but realized that UX design is more for me. Interesting. Will having a technical background still help me land a job in UX design? What do you think?
I definitely think so, because you will have to work with developers, or at least be able to hand off your designs to developers if you're not working with them directly. So I think having that knowledge, like I've seen it, other people who have coding knowledge, it's very helpful. So yeah, I definitely think that that's a positive for you.
Nice, yeah. Do you cover handoff to development in CareerFoundry in the immersion program? I can't remember if it's like detailed or something you had to fix, like maybe it's too
there is development information, but I think every company does handoff differently.
Yeah.
So we just do it in our Figma files. Some people use Zeppelin. I think because there's so many different ways to do it, and it depends on the team. I don't think it was explicitly covered, but there is like some terms and stuff I remember from the course.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'd also heard it was just very specific to each company, but it sounds like you have a great starting point there, Grace. So yeah, good luck to you. Okay, let's keep going. This is a question from Danielle, who says, were you able to backtrack and choose a different specialization after you realized it wasn't a fit?
I didn't check.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll let Morgan maybe explain a little bit about the UI spec and why like it wasn't for her, but that's probably a good question for a program advisor, Danielle, because honestly, I'm not entirely sure. We have maybe 4 or 5 design specializations you can choose from, and they're about a month to complete, and they're obviously designed to help you sort of choose a sort of niche before you like enter the job market. But I honestly don't know if yeah, like what the situation is about, like changing if it's not quite right for you. But our program advisors would definitely be able to answer that. So I recommend booking a free call with them to answer that. But Morgan, maybe you could just explain a little bit about the UI spec that you started, and yeah, maybe why it wasn't right for you.
The information was great. I was just terrible, honestly. I found myself getting really frustrated, and not in a productive way, like not in a way that like, oh, I need to get better at this. I do not naturally have an eye for design, visual design. And I was really just more interested in the beginning part of the UX process of actually coming up with the solution. And I learned that from the UX immersion. The other options were voice UI and I think front end development. I'm not positive.
Yeah.
But UI interested me the most. But by then I was just like, I would really rather just start doing projects outside of CareerFoundry and applying for jobs. I was very upfront in my interviews that I am not a visual designer. Like I was very open about that. I didn't fake being a good UI designer or anything like that. I was very open about what I was good at and what I was interested in.
Yeah, that's really important as well, because I think, yeah, we've mentioned there's a lot of crossover with UX and UI, but it doesn't mean that you have to have this whole package and whole skill set. And there are certain elements of UX design that, yeah, you don't need to be a good visual designer. Like, yeah, so I think, like you say, being upfront and honest about it as early as you can is better. Thank you. This is a question from Anna. She says, when in the interviewing stage, how do I best present my portfolio? Do I summarize from a top to bottom, or does the interviewer ask specific questions about my portfolio?
So again, that's going to be specific to the company, but when you know that you're going to do a portfolio presentation, that's usually not a first interview thing unless they tell you. If they just spring on you like, okay, let's see your portfolio. That would be a little bit of a red flag for me because that's not very good communication skills. For me, I asked the recruiter because they told me like, okay, next interview, it was like 4 interviews, by the way. Like the interview process is long for bigger companies. Like I think I started interviewing in September and got the job in November. It was crazy.
Wow.
So the last interview was the portfolio presentation. It was for a panel of UX strategists. And what I did, because I asked the recruiter, what are they looking to see? And he said they want to see 2 to 3 portfolio pieces. And I was like, okay, I don't have that many. He's like, and they want to see how you worked in a team. I'm like, haven't worked in a team, and they want to see how your designs impacted business outcomes. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not getting this job. So I used Canva. I like Canva because you can just use a template, and I was trying not to over design like how I've done in the past. So that was a big thing for me. And I took 2 portfolio pieces. So it was the like financial app that I had designed. And then I actually had done a design jam where I was partnered with a stranger, and we had a week to design something. It's like a contest. We lost terribly. And so that's what I used as my team experience. And I basically just summarized like what I learned and how I was able to work with someone remotely rather than the actual design process. And then for the financial app, I went through the full thing. That was like the bulk of my presentation. And then I talked about what business outcomes I would look for. Okay. So don't give up just because like you feel underqualified, because I didn't meet either of those qualifications and I got the job. And I allegedly, they told me this after the fact, but I don't know if they were just trying to make me feel good, that I like beat out people who have like degrees from Yale and stuff. And like, I don't know I don't know if Yale has a design program, so I don't know why they told me that, but like I had a boot camp education and everything, but because I showed like, this is what I would do hypothetically if you gave me the job, it worked out for me. So definitely ask what they're looking to learn from their presentation. Like, don't be afraid to go back and forth with them. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. I know that in the beginning of a new job searching process, it feels like you need to do everything in your power to secure a position. Make sure that the job's a good fit for you, because if they're not communicating with you, like I actually withdrew from different jobs because they were terrible communicators. So good luck.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Yeah, and yeah, good luck. And I think that's so true as well. You have to remember that when you're interviewing them as well. Like, you need to make sure it's the right fit for you if you've gone through the effort of making a career change. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask these questions. Yeah, great answer. Thanks, Morgan. Then we have time for a few more, and there are still quite a few questions. Anthony from LinkedIn would like to know, do you recommend design challenges for beginners? Maybe you mean how soon do you think you could get stuck into a design challenge? Like maybe like collaborative like projects, or like the design jam example that you mentioned?
Yeah, do it whenever you can. I mean, you might not win, because generally design jams, the winners are people who like work at design agencies and stuff, and they're working with their team on it, is what I learned. But I learned a lot from that experience. Get your hands dirty as soon as possible is like my motto. You lose nothing from doing that. Maybe some sleep.
It's worth it. Okay, nice. John, this is a great question and super interesting, topical at the moment. John would like to know, how much do you think AI will impact on UX and UI in the future?
I think it will influence it a lot. So I'm getting my master's. I'm starting a program in September for human-computer interaction and user experience design. And I'm going to be specializing in AI and machine learning. Amazing. I don't know much about it now, but maybe I'll if CareerFoundry will have me back, then maybe I'll talk about it in the future. I don't feel qualified to answer that. I don't know what the trend will be, but I mean, it's everywhere now. So I imagine it will impact it a lot, not in the sense that we'll lose our jobs, but we'll have to learn how to use it to amplify our jobs.
Completely, yeah. And that's so true. I think it's kind of hard to predict, isn't it? But it sounds like you're doing the right thing by like continuous learning. So good luck with it. That's really cool. Let's take 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up. Here's one from Jesse who says, do you learn the basic understanding of coding like HTML, Java, and CSS? I guess they mean with CareerFoundry, which is the short answer is no with the UX design program, but maybe you could talk a little bit, Morgan, about if you've tapped into any kind of coding or development tools like that in your journey.
I learned personally I take a lot of initiative in learning what the cross-functional team. I try to learn as much as possible at the roles. So like I've gotten certifications in development. I'm not good. I couldn't build anything, but I can have a conversation with them, and I can generally understand what they're talking to me about. I've taken certifications for like scrum.org stuff, where I've learned about my Scrum Master's role, my product owner's role, that kind of stuff. So this is completely off topic. Sorry. No, I don't need to code. I don't need to know how to code, but I do need to be able to communicate with my developers. We just talk to each other like people. Like, they don't use tech terms with me, but if we need to get into the nitty-gritty of why something may or may not work, having a little bit of that knowledge is helpful, but it's not needed.
Okay. Yeah. Good to know. Thanks. Okay. I'm mindful of the time. We're on the hour now, but this is a really nice question I think we should end with, from Saraya, who says, there are many people involved in one design. How do you put your point forward, or how do you let go of your idea which you thought was brilliant?
It all comes back to the priorities. So is the priority to create as much value as possible from something? Is the priority to get something out quickly? Is the priority consistency? It's up to you and your team to decide, like, okay, what's the decision maker here? Or why are we doing this? Because you might try and implement something new. You really like your design, but it's really inconsistent with like the message that we're trying to send, or something similar that appears on another page. There's not a lot of things where usually it's like the truth lies somewhere in the middle, where we compromise. But that's also why I show things very, very early. I slap ideas together. We have a meeting. I'm like, this is the direction I think. I don't ever say the idea I think we should head in. Like, these are the ideas. Where do we think that we should head? So I usually do that with designers, a design lead, and then our product owner and our UX strategist, and our content strategist as well. So like the full UX product team. And we bring in all those different perspectives. So, the product is bigger than yourself. It's not about your personal preferences. So I don't have any trouble letting go. There are times where I believe someone's reasoning is not solid, and I'll push back on that. But it's all about the user, and it's all about what the priority is at the time.
It's good to know. Yeah. And I think it is a bit of a mindset thing, isn't it? Like you say, you're not the kind of person to be like possessive over your design. So if you are like that, then yeah, the sooner you show your work and get feedback, maybe the better that will help you. So, thanks, Morgan. That was a great answer and really good advice. I hope it helped. Oh yeah, Sarai says thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So good job. Thank you so much, everyone. There were some amazing questions, so insightful. I really hope you've all found this valuable. You've learned a lot from Morgan, enjoyed hearing her story. I think it's really great to hear from Morgan. You spoke really well. Great story to share. And I'm so pleased for you. You're doing so well at Vanguard, and I wish you lots of luck there for your future. I'm sure it's very bright. Yeah, like I say, I hope we've answered and addressed most of your questions, and just thank you all for posting them and for attending the webinar today. Before we close, I'll just remind you that we have a special discount on at the moment that we're offering this month only. It's a tuition reduction worth up to $1,370 or €1,195 off the full price of our UX and our UI design programs. And if you want to receive more information about that, as I've mentioned, you can book a call with one of our program advisors by just clicking the sticky note in the chat in Big Marker. Alternatively, you can take advantage of a referral offer, which Morgan has. It's like an affiliate referral link. And if you sign up to a CareerFoundry program using her link, you can save 5% on your tuition. You can find that on Morgan's YouTube channel. I'm going to show the link to it here. I hope that's okay, Morgan.
Of course.
And of course, please subscribe. And there's so much great content on her channel about lots of topics we've covered today, starting in UX, portfolio interview tips, having no design experience to begin with. It's super helpful. I highly recommend it.
Thank you. If anybody has any questions that I missed, please leave comments on the videos. That's what I'm most responsive with.
Nice.
Yeah. So thanks for plugging that.
No worries. And please let me also just remind you that we have a fantastic blog and a YouTube channel at CareerFoundry as well. Plenty of great articles there about, and videos, of course, on YouTube about UX design, other tech fields, and career change in general. So yeah, please give us a follow and a like there as well. Amazing. Right. Okay. I think we're done. Thank you again, Morgan, for joining us and sharing your story. Do you have any final words, any final sign off?
Don't let yourself get scared. Embrace the imposter syndrome of being, okay, I'm learning something new. And, if you feel like you don't know what's going on, you're in the right place. That means that you're doing well to me. So best of luck to everybody.
Nice. Thank you. Amazing way to end. Thanks, Morgan. If you enjoyed this event, hope to see you at the next one. You can check out the CareerFoundry website for all the details about our upcoming events. Until then, thanks again for attending, everyone. We look forward to seeing you again, and have a great day, evening, afternoon, even day, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much. Bye.